Welcome today to the Gateway of Discovery, and I'm your host, Laurie Wheeler. This is the very first podcast that I am doing with guests, and today we are taking some time to take a deep dive into the portals that open us to discover who we really are, our deepest purpose, where medicine and energy meet, and the connection to that which brings us this information. So today, my guest is David Young, and we'll be exploring the missing years of Jesus and Mary Magdalene. So, David has been sharing his insights about Jesus and Mary Magdalene, his wife, all around the country. And he's written 4 books with his own beautiful illustrations, as he's an artist, one with music as well. And we're going to find out more about that. He's an award-winning artist, musician, flutist, known for playing 2 Renaissance flutes in harmony. That's no easy feat. He's recorded 70 albums over the years and worked with many other accomplished musicians as well. He does an event called A Portal Between Heaven and Earth, which blends his healing music with enlightening guided meditations. He claims since 2014, there have been something like 80,000 attendees who have shared the most profound experiences of their lives with ascended masters, goddesses, archangels, or loved ones. And today, he will create the diagram of the family tree of Jesus and Mary Magdalene to explain the missing years of their lives and why it was intentional. So, David, welcome to the show. I am super excited to have you today, and I can't wait to just explore this and hear all about what you want to share with us. It's a real pleasure to have you here, and I look forward to opening more information up about all of this.
Thanks, Laurie. It's my pleasure. My pleasure. I grew up Jewish, and I never thought I'd be given a talk like this. I started doing my meditation events in 2014. And after about a year of doing these events, Jesus, Mary Magdalene, and Mother Mary showed up to 3 people at an event, which was really an amazing surprise because I never expected that. And so I was a real skeptic about channeling. So I spoke with somebody who was giving me guidance on why people at my meditation events were having experiences with their loved ones. And I didn't even know it was possible to have an interdimensional experience with somebody who you loved, who had transitioned already into their heavenly body, into the heavenly dimension, you know. And so one of my friends, after doing my event for a year and talking about the book that I was promoting, which was called Channeling Harrison, it came out in 2014, about my experiences with George Harrison from the Beatles. And I was not a Beatles fan. I didn't care about the Beatles. I was a Led Zeppelin fan, AC/DC, and Bad Company and Pink Floyd. Really never cared that much about the Beatles. I loved their songs when I'd hear them on the radio, but I never learned any of their songs. So my friend asked me to do an event without sharing my experiences from the Channeling Harrison book, because I had done that event in Doylestown, Pennsylvania, 3 times already over that year. And he asked me to do an event without sharing those stories about George Harrison, and to just do 2 half-hour meditations. And that was when something very odd happened, because by that time, about 1,000 people at my events had shared reconnecting with their mom, their grandmother, their best friend from childhood who had died young. But the weird thing that happened was that 3 people in the room all shared seeing Jesus standing in the same place off to the left of where I was sitting. And can you imagine trying to fit that into your head, being a Jewish kid, pretty well-known flute player, and all of a sudden Jesus appears to 3 people at your event?
Yeah,
So,
just can you stop and just tell us what was that like for you? I mean, I can't really understand that. I'm not Jewish background, but I can just imagine how that must have been very different for you. What did you experience about that? And then maybe you can just tell us a little bit about how you came into writing a book about channeling George Harrison.
okay. Well, how did that feel? Well, just to give you an idea, growing up in a Jewish family, there is never a reason to talk about Jesus ever in your house. I never remember one conversation in my family about Jesus. So when the first guy shared that he saw Jesus standing off to the left of where I was sitting, that sounded so crazy to me.
Bet.
And so the most logical thing I could say, because at that point, George Harrison and John Lennon had appeared in spirit to about 500 people at my events already. And so the logical thing, because I've been logical to a fault, I have tried to be logical about all this stuff. But the logical thing for me to ask this guy was, how do you know it was Jesus and how do you know it wasn't George Harrison? Because so many people had seen George in spirit in my events. That was logical. And the guy said, well, I had the same thought. And as soon as I had that thought, Jesus made this cross appear behind him. The next thing I knew, he was flying over the heads of everybody in the audience, and there was blood flying everywhere. And I'm thinking, did I really just hear that? Did this guy just really share this in front of 20 people? Because, nothing ever prepared me for hearing anything like that. So the nicest thing I could say was, well, thank you very much for sharing. Does anybody else want to share? And
Yeah.
this woman shared the exact same thing that he shared. And
Wow.
then yeah, that was so mind blowing. And then at the end of the event, one of my friend's wives who was at this meditation came over to me and she whispered, she said, I saw him standing in the same spot as the other two, but I didn't want to say anything in front of everybody. So this is a person who I knew. She was a very logical person. So there was a famous channeler in Canada who was channeling George and John to me every day for at least an hour from 2013, before my book came out,
Wow.
until this time. And so I called up Bob Murray and I said, hey, Bob, you've been channeling George and John for a year. Can you channel Jesus? Because three people saw him standing in the same spot in the room. And I'd like to know, why did he come last night? You know what I mean? I've been doing these events for a year.
Yeah.
So if any of the listeners out there are come from a Jewish background, like the holiday that has, why is tonight different from all other nights? So that's what I said to Bob. I said, I don't understand why tonight of all nights he showed up to three people. So Bob said, I can't guarantee that I can connect with Jesus, but I could try. So I said, okay, I'll hold. So I got my cell phone. I'm looking at my phone. Yeah, I'm waiting for Jesus to pick up the phone.
Yeah, yeah.
And
We're
so
making light of it, but yeah.
after 2 very long minutes of waiting, I think that's the suspense part of the show, right? Like at
Sure.
my show, oop, that wasn't supposed to happen.
Oh, that's okay. We can
Okay.
pull it back. Yeah.
Wow, I don't know why that's even there. I didn't hit any button with that.
You
Okay,
are putting out a lot of energy, right?
I guess so. I guess so. So after 2 minutes, Bob says, okay, I've connected with Jesus. What do you want to ask him? And I look at the phone. I'm thinking, really? Okay. So all I could think of is I felt so uncomfortable because growing up from a Jewish background, you're really not supposed to be talking to Jesus or anybody in that family. You know what I mean? Because in the Jewish religion, that family is not recognized as, you know,
Yeah.
so I felt very uncomfortable and I said, I can't think of anything to say right now. All I can say is that I feel so uncomfortable because I grew up in a Jewish family.
Sure.
And so the first thing Bob Murray channeled Jesus saying to me in his slow voice, because Jesus has a deep voice and he speaks very slow, and he
Mm-hmm.
speaks slow so it really gets your attention. And he
Mm-hmm.
said, well, I can understand that. I grew up in a Jewish family also,
Uh-huh.
which made me laugh.
Yeah.
And it made me think, he's trying to
Yeah.
make me feel comfortable because when somebody tries to make you laugh,
Mm.
you know, So I said, well, I don't know what to think about you because I grew up in a Jewish family, and I don't know what not to think about you because there's a lot of people who really think you're really great. So
Yeah.
can you tell me a little bit about yourself? We didn't have a Facebook profile I could look up.
Right.
But and tell me a little bit about yourself. What do you like? What don't you like? So the first thing he said was, I don't like rituals. When
Mm,
people do rituals, they think they're getting closer to God, but the only way we really get closer to God is through opening our heart and through love. And at first, I thought he was talking about the Catholic Church, but then I realized Judaism has rituals. Every religion has rituals.
mm.
Okay, what else? The second thing he said was, I don't like pedestals. When people put others up on a high pedestal, the only thing they get is a stiff neck from looking up, which I also thought was funny.
Uh-huh.
And then the third thing he said to me was just a mind blower. He said, I did not create Christianity.
Mm,
Whew. Well, towards the end of the conversation, I said, I never ever could have imagined that I'd be having a conversation with Jesus and have George and John's presence in that conversation, because by this time I could feel their presence in my life, and I could also see them. And so I knew that they were part of this conversation, and it just struck me, whoever would have thought that John Lennon, George Harrison, and Jesus would be in one conversation, like in one, how do you put that into sense in your head?
mm,
And so I said, do you guys like work together often? I mean, do you get together once in a while? I mean, am I the only guy who you guys are doing all this stuff with? Um, you know, it's hard to imagine you being friends with John Lennon and George Harrison.
mm,
And he said, well, there have been times when I have sought George and John's help. Then Bob said, oh, I got to go now. Talk to you tomorrow, David. He hangs up. And I'm like, wait a minute. Wait a
mm,
minute. Why would Jesus ever need George and John's help? I mean,
mm,
did he get a new guitar and he needs somebody to teach him how to tune it? There's electric tuners. He could get an electric tuner. I'm being silly. And
mm.
so the whole next day, I can't get this out of my head.
Of course not. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So at the end of the day, I call up Bob Murray. I said, Bob, I got another question to ask Jesus. Can you see if you can get a hold of him? And he said, well, I can't guarantee it, but I can try. So I said, okay, I'll hold. And I only had to wait a minute of suspense, not 2 minutes the first time. And I said, you said something to me yesterday that I just don't understand why you would say this. Why would you need George and John's help for anything?
Mhm.
And he said, well, there are certain people that I'm supposed to be working with, that I'm supposed to be doing projects with. And for whatever reason, these people are not open to working with me. And because George and John were so loved in the Beatles, and after the Beatles with their solo work, they were so loved by so many people, sometimes the only way I can get through to people
Mm.
is with George and John's help. And I thought, that makes a lot of sense.
Well,
That's
now is it through their songs, or how did he approach that?
well, I didn't find out what he meant by that until 4 years later,
Okay.
because over those 4 years, I started to keep track of all the experiences that people were having at my meditation events. Because once Jesus, Mary Magdalene, and Mother Mary showed up at that first event,
Mm,
they showed up to 400 events in a row. And they showed up to 1,500 people at my events. And they told people little parts of their story that I was able to put together what actually happened in their lives. And that's what I call the diagram of the family tree in the missing years of Jesus and Mary Magdalene. Because there are many things in the Bible that if you really look at, you got to think about it for a second. So we have certain anchor points about who we've been told Jesus is, what he looked like, which
mm.
he didn't look like that because they didn't they didn't have highlights back in that day, you know. And his skin was the color of an average person who grew up in the Middle East.
Mm.
And that's a caramel color skin. It's not a white color skin like I have.
Right.
And during the summer, the caramel colored skin people who look like they're from Puerto Rico or from the Middle East, in the sun, their caramel colored skin would turn a shade of brown. So he was closer, and Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene were closer to being brown skinned than they were to being white skinned.
Yeah.
Okay. So at my events, many of the people who came to my events were professional channelers who would come to get their spiritual battery recharged at one of my events because I played the flute for a half hour and it was very healing and high vibration music that I was playing. And these channelers would give me messages from the various ascended masters. So to give you an idea, I did 4 events a week from 2014 till 2020 when the pandemic started. Okay. At every one of these events that I did, 3/4 of the people shared have an experience with their mom, their grandmother, or somebody who they knew when they were younger who died young. Okay. And when Jesus and Mary Magdalene and Mother Mary started to appear to people at events, they would give me messages from these professional channelers who had come to the event. So just imagine it's a Thursday night and the meditation is over. And a woman raises her hand. She says, I'm a professional channeler, and Jesus told me to tell you that there's big news coming out of the Vatican in Rome. And I'm thinking, well, maybe you got the wrong guy because I don't care what comes out of the Vatican in Rome. I never cared about what comes out of the Vatican in Rome. And just
So
imagine.
David, let me stop you there. Why do you think that he chose specifically you to bring this information through the channelers to you? What specifically do you think, or why? Do you have any idea?
Well, I could answer that question in about 6 hours, or I can try to answer it in a couple of minutes because we have other things that I need to share with you guys. Sure. We have all lived before. We've been on every country. We've been in every religion. We've been every color. And most of us have no idea or very little idea about who we were connected with in our other lives. When we meet somebody in this life, like let's say in a romantic way, where you feel like you've had a past life connection with somebody, that is an accelerator in your relationship because your soul and that person's soul has a history already. But the thing is that there are so many people that we have lived with in the past that we don't have a recollection of that lifetime because we've lived hundreds and hundreds of lifetimes. So apparently before this lifetime, I had made this agreement to write this book. I don't remember making that agreement. I don't remember signing up for any of this stuff. I just thought I was a good flute player, and I wrote a book about these wild interdimensional experiences that I had with George Harrison that led me to doing meditation events. And those meditation events turned into kind of like, I don't use the word seances because there's such a negative connotation with that word. But these were like musical seances where I would tell people stories that would open their mind. And then I would play a half-hour flute meditation. And then after the meditation, people would share their experiences. And it was amazing how many people had the same experiences on that specific night. So when I was saying, so let's say Jesus on a Thursday night appears to somebody, tells me there's big news coming out of the Vatican in Rome, right? Well, on Friday night, there's 3 channelers who give me that same message from Jesus who were not there on Thursday night and had no idea I was told that message the night before. And then the following night, there could be 2 more people who Jesus gave the same message to. or Mother Mary or Mary Magdalene. And so what these were confirmations for me, because it was completely impossible for this to happen if he wasn't telling these people who were not there the night before the same message. And, you know, one of the things as life kept evolving and this whole thing kept growing, one of the things that happened was I got connected with a woman named Mimi who came to one of my events in Florida, in Fort Lauderdale. And Mimi was an amazing channeler. She was an acupuncture doctor and a Reiki master and a healer. And when she became my girlfriend in 2016, she started channeling George and John and Jesus and Mary Magdalene and Mother Mary on a daily, weekly basis, like 4 days a week, 5 days a week. She'd be channeling one of them who would be giving me messages about things that ended up being part of this book that's called The True Story of Jesus and His Wife, Mary Magdalene. And that's this book over here. Okay.
And I read it. It's beautiful with all your illustrations in it as well.
Well, the illustrations, the 50 paintings that are in this book, I didn't know these paintings were going to be in this book until after I wrote the book, and then realized that all these paintings were telling their story.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to start, I want to get into sharing the diagram of the family tree.
Okay.
Okay, because this is
Yeah.
this is really
this will blow your mind, people.
okay. Okay, so if you were watching a movie and all you saw was the last 5 minutes of the movie, you would have no idea how the different characters relate to each other, what the context of anything is. So, in the Bible, on the last day of Jesus' life in the Bible, there are 3 men who were crucified, who are tortured like that, but only one of these men, whose real name is Yeshua, only one of these men is taken down from the cross after 6 hours and put into the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea. But they've taken out the relationship of Yeshua and Joseph of Arimathea. So we have no idea, why is he the only guy put into this guy's tomb? The last person to be seen at the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea is Mary Magdalene. But they've taken out Mary Magdalene's relationship with Joseph of Arimathea, and they've taken out her relationship with Yeshua. So we have no idea what has happened in the story. So let me put in the different pieces of this puzzle so you can understand the story. Mother Mary had a sister, and that sister became the wife of Joseph of Arimathea. They had 2 children, Mary Magdalene and her sister Martha, who is also in the Bible. Do you know why her last name is Magdalena? It's because on the Sea of Galilee, there's a little place on the southwestern corner called Magdala, and she was Mary from Magdala. That's why her name is Mary Magdalene.
Right.
What happens is that Mary Magdalene, Martha's mom, dies young. So Mother Mary adopts her 2 nieces. So now Mary Magdalene and Martha, who were Mother Mary's nieces, are now her adopted daughters. This all happens during the missing years of Jesus's life.
And you are also saying that Joseph of Arimathea, if I understand and follow this correctly, that Mary Magdalene is the daughter of Joseph of Arimathea.
Exactly.
Okay, just want to be
Exactly.
clear. And Martha, her sister, as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
So the missing years of Jesus's life start when he's 12. There's a reason why they started the missing years of his life at 12. And that's because when he was 12 was when he started studying for his bar mitzvah.
Mm-hmm.
And the early Christians, before they rewrote the Bible in 381, the early Christians, because Jesus's bar mitzvah was in the Bible, the early Christians used to bar mitzvah the boys because they wanted to be like Jesus. And so they started the missing years of his life when he was 12. So people would stop giving their boys bar mitzvahs because the church had their own rituals that they wanted people to follow. Okay, so the missing years of his life start when he's 12, and he returns to Israel when he's 30, and when his younger brother James, who is St. James in the Bible, is 27. Now, we have all been told that Jesus was a carpenter. And that's kind of like a giant anchor point in Christianity. Well, Jesus came from Israel, which is a desert. They don't have trees in a desert. That's why it's called a desert.
Mm.
So if he was a carpenter, how could he make a living in a place that doesn't have trees? Yeah. Well, let me tell you a little bit more about Joseph of Arimathea.
Good question. And here's the thought as well. My understanding, having been to Egypt as we just came back, and also to the Mediterranean, where Jesus was initiated through the Egyptian school of mysteries as well. So are you saying that he also potentially spent time in Egypt during those missing years as well, studying?
Absolutely. But you have to understand that the where Egypt is located compared to Jerusalem, it's right across the Red Sea.
Right.
And so the way people in California would go to Sedona on spiritual retreats, that's the same way people from Israel would go to Egypt. So it wasn't just Jesus who went to Egypt. Everybody who was interested in spirituality in any way or were looking for a fun place to go, Egypt was the place to go. And if you look at the map, and there is a map in my book, if you look at the map, the Mediterranean Sea connects all of this part of the Middle East. And all of these places needed food and products. And so Joseph of Arimathea in the Bible is known as the wealthy merchant. And a wealthy merchant had ships. And so that he had wooden ships. Jesus and James were sailors who worked on their uncle's boats. Now, back in the day, and pretty much throughout history, sailors have never had a good reputation. So it was a lot easier to show Jesus in a respectful way by saying he was a carpenter who worked on the wooden ships that when they would be damaged in the wind, he would work on the wood. It sounded better saying that he was a carpenter versus saying he was a sailor, because a lot of women didn't have good opinions of sailors.
Sure.
Okay. So what happens is Jesus and James, the two brothers, return to Israel when Jesus is 30. Okay. Mother Mary introduces them to their two cousins who are now their stepsisters. Jesus and Mary Magdalene have love at first sight. And James and Martha have love at first sight. And so from the time Jesus is 30 until he's 33, he and Mary Magdalene have 3 kids. That's easy math.
And David, I don't want to overlook this period of
Sure.
time because I think this is a very important aspect where and how Mary and Yeshua met. Mary was brought in by her mother into the secret sisterhood of Isis and was taught the mystical ways, the healing ways. And so she was being prepared at a very young age. And then also Yeshua was brought in and taught the mysteries as well. And they met at the well. And I never really understood what the well meant until Mary Magdalene showed up for me one day, because I also channel her and Yeshua. And she said to me, she and I used to meet at the well, and she would tell me what was going on, the happenings. And this is why my connection to Yeshua at the age of 5 years old. So I think this is an important aspect, that they knew each other. It was love at first sight, but they were also prepared. She was prepped for becoming the wife of Yeshua, not a prostitute like she was claimed to be, but
That
yeah.
that rumor didn't start till 800 years later.
Right.
But because every time Mary Magdalene is listed in the Bible,
Yeah.
she's called Mary Magdalene, but there's a different Mary who had the bad reputation.
Yeah.
That's a different Mary.
Yeah.
That rumor was started 800 years later by the Pope because there were rumors that somehow Mary Magdalene was pregnant with Jesus's baby, like they allude to in the Da Vinci Code movie, and that somehow she ended up in France and she had his child there, because there was a whole community of people who were their descendants. Because I'm going to get to that in a minute here. So Jesus and Mary Magdalene have 3 kids. One of the things that Jesus and Mary Magdalene had in common is that it was both of their first lifetimes on earth. They were incarnated into this soul family with Mother Mary and Mother Mary's sister and Joseph of Arimathea and James and Jesus's other brothers, because Jesus had 4 brothers and 3 sisters. Those brothers, St. James is one of them. These are integral parts of the story because it was a family. You know, if everybody who has brothers and sisters, you would never call one of your brothers or one of your sisters one of your apostles. That really would never go over. And so what happened was, here, let me get another colored pen over here. In the year 381, Emperor Constantine was having a big problem in the Roman Empire because half of the people believed that Jesus was born God, and the other half of the people believed that he was born a man who became spiritual, and eventually God adopted him. It's kind of like a similar thing of where we're at right now in 2025, because there are some people who believe that Jesus is the only way, and there are many people who believe that Jesus is one of the saints, one of the ascended masters, and that Moses and Krishna and Buddha, that they're all relevant and they're all on the same team. Okay. So because there were so many fights and riots breaking out all over the Roman Empire, Emperor Constantine called the Council of Nicaea. Nicaea was a place in Turkey that was on a beach that was a very beautiful town. And they had all of the bishops from the entire Roman Empire meet in Nicaea at this big council because they were rewriting the Bible. And one of the things that they did is they took out all of these missing years of his life because they didn't want to explain that he had a family, that he had brothers. If he's the only son of God, how can he have 4 brothers? Yeah. And who was his dad? And where does all this stuff make sense? So they start the missing years of his life when he's 12, simply so they don't have to explain everything that I've just explained, because they don't want people to know that he has a wife, because they have made him divine and perfect.
Yeah, but to be a rabbi, don't you have to, and I think this is written in the Bible, but to be a rabbi, you have to be married, don't you?
You have to have two things before they let you
Yeah.
become a rabbi. You have to have a wife and you have to have children.
Yeah.
It's like
Okay.
the opposite of the Catholic Church where you can't have children,
Right.
right?
Okay.
So at the Council of Nicaea, they take out all this stuff. They simply say these are missing years and they don't have the information anymore. They have the information, but they don't want that information shared because that information
Mm.
is conflicting for the story that they're telling. And one of the big things that they added to the Bible, probably the biggest thing that they added to the Bible, was this thing called the virgin birth.
Right.
Because the first 380 years of the Bible, there was no virgin birth. The only reason why they added the virgin birth in the year 381 is because there were 5 other religions in the world, especially in the Middle East at that time, that all had a virgin birth in their Bible. So for thousands of years, they were celebrating Horus's birthday. Horus was the son of Isis, and he's like an Egyptian god, or they made him into Egyptian god, right? And his birthday was December 25th. That was celebrated for 1,000 years before Jesus was born. The only reason why it's called Christmas is because everybody in the Middle East was used to celebrating that holiday on December 25th as Horus's birthday and the winter solstice. And they made a mass for Christ, and that's where the word Christmas comes from. So understanding Jesus on a deeper level, I hate to say it, but it's kind of like the story we were told about Santa Claus, that he has a white beard and a red suit and these reindeer. Well, they didn't have red where St. Nicholas was from. So he had a brown jacket, like a grizzly bear jacket, and he had a white beard. He had a red beard. So you see how the colors got mixed up there. And we have this image of Santa Claus. He's got a red outfit and a white beard. But if Santa Claus actually appeared to you in a channeling session, he would say to you, look, I didn't have a red outfit. I had a brown outfit. It was a grizzly bear fur. And the funny thing is that when I was driving on the way to this interview, I was going over this in my head about that Santa Claus really didn't have a red suit. He had a brown suit because it was from a grizzly bear. And right as I was thinking it, the car right in front of me pulls in front of me, and the word grizzly is in the license plate. So
Yeah. Well, we've commercialized it and made it a good story, for commercialism. That's.
well, the thing is, we didn't really
Well, not.
commercialize it. It
Yeah.
was commercialized for us.
Yeah. Right.
Um, and so when the virgin birth was added to the Bible, all of a sudden they have to cover this lie.
Yeah.
And so they've been covering this lie for the last, we're in 2025, like for the last 1,500 years, because they're trying to make everybody think that Jesus is the only way. But there's so much that was added to the Bible. After this whole story happened, the Bible was rewritten over 1,000 times by over 1,000 writers. These writers were like Hollywood,
Mm.
Hollywood screenwriters, where the whole idea is to make the story more dramatic,
Yeah. Yeah.
and the story was already dramatic.
I think the closest one that has all the pieces, as far as my understanding of what I've heard, is the Bible that's in Ethiopia.
Yeah.
And my understanding is that's the closest one to the real deal.
The Bible, the first 3 books of the Bible by Matthew, Mark, and Luke were written 50 years after this whole thing happened.
Yeah. Try recounting that, huh?
Try remembering a conversation 50 years later when you're having a hard time remembering your own name when you're 80 or something like this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
And so to go back to this,
Yeah.
there were 3 men tortured on that day.
Mm,
but only one of them is taken down from the cross and put in the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea. And that is because only one of those men is married to Joseph of Arimathea's daughter, Mary Magdalene.
mhm, mhm, mm,
So that Joseph of Arimathea pays a Roman soldier
mhm.
to take him down off the cross after 6 hours because it was the eve of Passover.
Right.
And in Judaism, the holiday starts the night before. So at sundown, after
Mhm,
6 hours,
mhm.
he was taken down off the cross when most people who were tortured like that were tortured for 3 days and nobody lived through that.
Yeah. And so that was no accident. I mean, when you think about it, right? That was all divine, purposely, in a sort of way, not happening, but it helped the happening, so to speak.
Well, what happened was this was not the plan.
Right. It wasn't.
One of the things that Archangel Gabriel told me
Mm,
through one of the channelers who I spoke with for 4 years was that this was not the plan. The plan was not to have somebody who was a loving guy get tortured
right.
and never see his 3 kids again. That was not the plan. That was not the first choice. But when this thing happened,
Mm,
the reason why he turned over the money tables in the Bible,
mm,
the reason why is because he'd been traveling all over the world with his brothers,
mhm,
going and studying from the most spiritual people in Egypt and the most spiritual people in India and in Tibet. He studied from the Ayurvedic medicine doctors, the yogis there. He studied from the lamas
mhm.
in Tibet. And one of the basic things, if not the first thing, everybody learns in spirituality is that heaven is within us because we can connect to the heavenly dimension.
Right. We're
Okay.
multidimensional, right?
Yeah. And the saying, unless we become like little children, we don't get to see the kingdom of heaven. Where that originated from was because a child tunes into his imagination because his logical mind hasn't been created yet.
Not
And
developed.
and it's easy for a child to just play story time and imagine things in your mind.
Mm,
Okay. When we imagine things in our mind, they're actually taking place on an inner level of heaven.
mhm,
Okay. So
mhm,
the thing is that when this happened, Mary Magdalene had to make the hardest choice that any woman could ever have to make
mhm,
because she had 3 children with him. And
mhm,
she had a choice of raising her kids and letting her husband die,
mm,
or giving her 3 kids over to Mother Mary and then trying to save his life.
mhm,
And that's what she did.
mm,
So what happens next is that Roman soldier takes him down from the cross after 6 hours, puts him in his uncle's tomb, his
mm.
father-in-law's tomb, Joseph of Arimathea's tomb, and that Roman soldier lets Mary Magdalene and Martha into the tomb each day to change the bandages on his hands and on his feet and on his rib. And on the third day,
Because he didn't actually completely die, right?
no,
Like,
he
this is
was
why
having
they
a
talk
near-death
about
experience.
crucifixion, right? Crucifixion is not about death as it is depicted. It
Yeah,
is about resurrection and about the rising through and becoming empowered. That's the real meaning behind it.
really. I know. But the
Yeah.
thing is that nobody knew that
Yeah.
this Roman soldier had brought this wooden cart.
Right. Mm.
And this wooden cart, can you see it?
A
You
little
look,
bit closer. Just come a little closer, David, and a little over. Okay. So it's a drawing, as we can see. It's a drawing of, that's perfect, of the wooden cart and the horse and the soldier.
right.
Thank you.
But that's not actually the soldier.
Okay. Who
The
is it?
wooden the wooden cart is brought by the soldier and the cart is covered by hay.
Hmm.
He slides the hay off to one side and puts Jesus's body while he's unconscious, having a near-death experience, in the center of the cart.
Mm.
Then he covers Jesus's body with the hay. Mary Magdalene rides the horse, and that is how she saves his life.
Ah, okay.
So in all the movies I've seen, whoever saves the good guy is the hero or the heroine. Mary Magdalene is the hero. She saved his life. They lived on that cart and they went all the way up to the south of France, almost 3,000 miles, where they ended up finding Mary Magdalene's bones in the year 1279.
Mm-hmm.
Let me tell you about that, because this is a really amazing part of the story.
And
So
they went, David, my understanding, they went to the south of France, and actually they were in, my understanding, in England as well, Glastonbury and such, because of the Druids having protective, being able to protect the two of them and family and such. And be,
I Okay, I have a different understanding of that because I've been able to put together when different things happened in his life.
okay,
Okay.
go ahead. Yeah.
Before he met Mary Magdalene when he was 30. Okay. Before he met Mary Magdalene, while he was working for his uncle Joseph of Arimathea, he and his brother James were traveling all over the world. And that is when he went up to the British Isles. And that's why there's a church in Joseph of Arimathea's name up there. I can't remember if it's Scotland or England, up there somewhere. But that's why and when that happened. It happened before this terrible thing happened.
Oh,
Because
okay.
once that happened, he lived with Mary Magdalene in the cave of Mary Magdalene in the south of France
Mm-hmm.
until Mary Magdalene was in her 50s. By that time, they had a fourth child. That child's name was Sarah. I've met 7 reincarnations of Sarah,
Mm-hmm.
okay, who all had experiences when they were kids, knowing that they had this repeating experience where they were growing up in a cave, and that Jesus and Mary Magdalene were their mom and dad. And many of these people had that experience when they were 5 years old, like you had experiences when you were 5 years old, because Mary Magdalene and Jesus and Mother Mary would appear to these people like yourself to give them a clue that they were part of this whole story back then.
Mm-hmm.
I've met, I am such a logical, skeptical person.
Mm-hmm.
So any of this stuff that I'm sharing with you has been so proven to me and so confirmed in different ways that if I'm sharing this with you, it's only because it's been confirmed to me, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So let me tell you a little bit about the cave of Mary Magdalene. So in the year 1279, a French nobleman is visited in a dream by Mary Magdalene, who tells this French nobleman that her bones are buried in a box under a little church
Mm-hmm.
in a tiny town in the south of France called Saint Maximin.
Mm-hmm.
This is such a powerful experience that the French nobleman takes a crew of men down to the south of France. He finds Saint Maximin. He goes under the little church that he finds, and there's a wooden box with human bones in the box, and there's a handwritten letter that states, "Here lie the bones of Saint Mary Magdalene." So that French nobleman built the Basilica of Saint Mary Magdalene in Saint Maximin in 1279, and they changed the name of the town in their historical records to Saint Maximin Le Saint Baum. And what that means is the saint from the cave, because Mary Magdalene was known to be a healer and she lived in that cave. Jesus had to live in hiding because
Yeah.
he was looked at as a criminal and he had scars on his hands to prove that he was a criminal. And if he was caught by the Roman army, they would have crucified him again and killed him.
Mm-hmm.
So he had to live in hiding for the rest of his life. When Mary Magdalene is about in her 50s, after they have their fourth child, and the fourth child, his name is Sarah, which means little princess in that language. Sarah had 3 kids of her own. And so their bloodline lived on in the south of France. And then 800 years later, there's so many of their bloodline living there who all are telling this story. That's when the Pope starts the bad rumor about Mary Magdalene and sends his army up there to wipe out the family.
Mm. Yeah.
Now, there are some people who have the belief that Mary Magdalene came across with two other Marys, because there's a port of the three Maries in the south of France.
Mm-hmm.
Those two other Marys were Mary of Salone, Mary of Bethany, and Martha, Mary Magdalene's sister.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so they landed there in a boat because Mary Magdalene's father was Joseph of Arimathea. He had lots of boats.
Mm-hmm.
But from where the port of the Three Maries is in the south of France to where they found Mary Magdalene's bones 200 miles away in St. Maximin, you know that saying, you can't get there from here?
Yeah.
You know what's in between the port of Three Maries and where they found her bones in St. Maximin?
Mm.
The French Grand Canyon. You can't get there from here.
Yeah.
They found her bones there. That's where she was. But the other three Maries were her sister Martha, Mary of Salone, and Mary of Bethany.
Yeah. Yeah, we've trekked through some of that. It's very mountainous. You have the Pyrenees. There's all kinds of mountain area. It would be a lot. Mm-hmm. I mean, because everything they did on foot, and not only that, but they had to be very careful as well. You know, like you're saying. So we don't really think about the challenges that these people underwent. I mean, I think anytime I even become complaining about something, I think about what they went through. I really do, to bring about what they brought, this beautiful union that they brought to our world. I mean, I should ask you, David, what do you think their story, what do you think this shares for people today? Why is this important today for us? I mean, and just want your opinion on that.
You know, there are a lot of reasons why this is important, because there are so many people who have had so many lifetimes where the Bible story has been pushed down their throat, or they've just accepted it. Okay. Jesus, of the 1,500 people he appeared to at my events with Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene, he didn't say one word of scripture to one person out of 1,500 people. Because that story has been so manipulated and distorted from who he actually is, who she actually is. And so it's so deep, because there's the repercussions of people being told that no matter what they do, they're a sinner. And if they don't accept Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior, they're going to hell forever.
Right.
That is echoing in people's cells for 1,500 years.
Yeah.
And believe me, I've met reincarnations of Joseph of Arimathea. And one of my friends, his name is actually Joseph. And he was Joseph of Arimathea, one of the reincarnations of Joseph of Arimathea. He could not believe that he was worthy of anything, because it's been so ingrained in him in this life and in other lives previous to this, that when you hear a lie for long enough, you start to believe it. And he just can't believe that he had anything to do with anything, because he just doesn't think that he's worthy. And so many people don't think that they're worthy. And the reason why they don't think they're worthy is because the story has been set up intentionally to make people feel unworthy. Because if you don't feel worthy, then you can be easily manipulated.
Yeah, and that this great God who sits in a chair, and is male, is passing judgment on those, and that you can't get into the gates of heaven, right? Which we know heaven is within, but you can't get in if you don't do this and this and this and follow this rule and this rule. And yeah, it's so misconstrued, but it is, like you say, it's in ourselves. It is. Yeah.
And so when people, in order for people to think that they're worthy, they have to hear a different story,
Yeah.
because the story that so many people have been told is that they're not worthy. But the way that you help yourself
Mm.
to feel worthy is that you start an inner conversation with whichever ascended master you want to connect with. So
Mm.
if it's Buddha, you start an inner conversation with Buddha and you talk to him a little bit every day.
Mm.
Or if it's Krishna, you talk to Krishna, whoever you want to connect with. It's not one way or the highway. It's
Mm.
not one road up the mountain.
Mm.
Almost everybody who knows anything about spirituality understands that God created different religions because there's different languages. And for thousands of years, we didn't have a translator in our cell phone.
Mm.
And all the religions, they talk about the same golden rule.
Yeah.
Treat other people the way you want to be treated. That's simple. Every religion has it. There are things that the different religions have in common, but the whole idea of a Father and His Son and the Holy Spirit being the Trinity, that's
Mm.
not who I think the Trinity is. The Trinity is Mother Mary on the top and Jesus and Mary Magdalene underneath. So it makes a pyramid. That's the Trinity. You want to have an experience with God? You can have an experience with Mother Mary, Jesus, Mary Magdalene, Krishna, Moses, Buddha. There's tons of them. They're all one team. The religions in this world make it look like they're competing, because every Sunday you have a choice to put your $20 bill in this church, in this temple, or that synagogue. But from the heavenly perspective, all of the ascended masters and the goddesses and the archangels are all on one team. And they have told me through numerous people, they like to be called the heavenly team because they are a team.
Mm.
I can't tell you how many thousands of people at my events had experiences with more than one of the ascended masters or more than one of the goddesses.
Yeah.
There's so
Yeah.
much love between them because they're all on a higher level and they want to be known as one team.
Yeah.
So are we getting to the end? Because there's one thing I want to show you. There's an image that I want to show you guys.
Yeah. And I'm just going to add a little thought here. For
Sure.
people that may not have that ability to connect with an ascended master, and there are many people, because this is my work and I work with many folks that don't feel they have the ability to connect. They haven't been taught or learned, or something's a barrier that they can't connect. But you can connect with your higher self. Your higher self is you, that spark of the divine, of source, of what you call God or whatever name you have. And everybody is that. We are that. We keep forgetting because we've been taught otherwise. But you don't even have to go through anyone to find that. You are it. I've talked about this numerous times of recent. There's a movie, Cocoon, where one of
Mm-hmm.
the people, you're my age, so you know, they're in the swimming pool, right? I think it's Steve Guttenberg. He's in the swimming
Yeah.
pool with the alien, right? But she looks like a young woman, very pretty. And he wants to have a little thing with her. And so what she does is she unzips her body, right? Like it's a zipper, just like my zipper, right? I want to zip it down, right? And she peels it back, and this most beautiful light comes out. And I think that's the perfect depiction, because we often buy things, in our mind, believe things when we see visual, right? And so this visual of her coming out of herself, of who she really is. She's this beautiful, magnificent light. This is who we are. We all have that access. It's just because what gets in the way is our illusion, and so there are those that go and want to hear specific information like you have, and so much that has come to you. I mean, you are a wealth of knowledge of what has come to you over the years through the different channelings and people that they're receiving messages, and that you provide this beautiful umbrella of light where people can access this where they may have never been able to. And then you collect it and formulate, and here you are sharing this most amazing story of the life of these two people who bring this love story and this union, and what the union, the focus is coming through the heart, which is what we need today. So
Totally.
yeah.
You know, not everybody can channel,
Right.
but if you are serious about wanting to know more about what really happened in their life, just open your mind and put the whole story that you've heard about them, put them in a closet somewhere. And when you pray or when you meditate, ask inwardly, show me what really happened.
Mm,
Show me who you really are.
mm,
Show me who you want me to see who you are.
mm.
Because if you say that, you're activating their energy and you're going to bring them into your energy.
Yeah.
And they can communicate with you in symbols. Sometimes you may hear a voice, you're not even sure where that voice came from. Sometimes you'll get an image, but go in with an open mind. Our minds are like umbrellas. They're most useful when they're open. So go into your meditation with an open mind and say, whoever you're speaking to inwardly, whoever you want to connect with, and just say, show me more about what really is, but what really happened to you, and connect with me. Because when you connect inwardly with any of the ascended masters or the goddesses, they can pick up your very vibration, that you're thinking about them and that you're ready to know more. But you're going to have to make room in your mind and remove that old story from your head so you have room for whatever they want to give you.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. We have to make the room come through the heart. Everything we ask gets imprinted into the field, and then because it's electromagnetic, we bring it to us, everything. So this too will go out, and it will bring what is necessary for you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautifully said. Thank you, David. Show us what else you wanted to show us at the end here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my book came out in 2019. It's available as a printed book. It's also available as an audio book. But after COVID started in 2020, during lockdown, I had finished off the basement where I was living, and I couldn't buy any canvases to paint on because it was lockdown and everything was closed. So I took a piece of sheetrock that was 4 feet wide by about 2 feet high.
How to get it out, right? How to get it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, let me see. Am I able? Oh, maybe I got the wrong one here. I'm really good with the flute, but I'm not so good with this technical stuff. Okay, here we go. So I am going to click on this. Okay. I made a painting. I'm not going to show you out. I made a painting that had a symbol, and the symbol was like a pyramid with a circle in the middle. And what it meant was that when two people who love each other are separated, one person is over here, the other person is over here. They send love to each other over the sun, symbolic of heaven. And that's how we stay connected with the people we love once we're disconnected from them. Because once that terrible thing happened, Jesus and Mary Magdalene never saw their 3 kids again, and they never saw Mother Mary again. Okay, so that's what the inspiration was for my painting. A year after I made this painting, I got woken up in the middle of the night by my guides, and they had me go onto YouTube and look up this archaeological show that was filmed in Jerusalem, where they found this cave that had, I think it was 6 or 7 ossuaries, which is what they used for caskets back then, because they didn't have wood. Caskets are made of wood, and ossuaries were made of limestone, and they were much smaller. That the bones of the deceased were put in the ossuary. And they believe that it's the cave, that it's the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea. So now I'm going to click on the bottom image. Can you see that?
I can. Yes.
So the bottom image is my painting.
Mm-hmm.
The top image is the symbol above their tomb in
Mm,
Jerusalem that these archaeological guys found.
mm,
Okay. I sent this picture with the description of what I just explained to you guys to my 5 closest friends who I've been sharing all this deep stuff that I can't necessarily share with everybody.
mm.
An hour after I sent this to my friend Rob Scarpa, who's a channeler on Long Island, he texted me back. He said, an hour after you sent me this picture, Amanda Ellis, a channeler from England who channels Jesus and John Lennon one day a week on her podcast for years.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So an hour after I send this to Rob, he's listening to Amanda Ellis's podcast where she's channeling John Lennon and Jesus. And Jesus explains this tomb on that podcast, that this was the symbol above their tomb, not where his bones ended up being, because he ended up, after Mary Magdalene died in her 50s, he went back to Egypt and he had a whole other life back in Egypt.
Mm,
I'm sorry, not Egypt, in India.
mhm,
In India.
mhm.
And if you look it up on Google, it's I think it's hilarious. But if you look up, is Jesus's body actually buried in Srinagar, India? It'll show you the house where his body is actually buried.
Mm. Wow. This
I,
is
I
amazing.
guess I should take this image off here now, right? I don't know how I'm going to take that off here.
Well, just hit stop sharing.
Okay.
I think it's a red button on the
Oh,
screen.
stop sharing. Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm. There you go. Okay. Oh, technology, right? Oh, that's beautiful.
Oh, what a revelation. Stop sharing. Maybe that's the end of our interview. It's stop
Uh,
sharing time, you know?
That's great. Well, I just want to say that in this chat, I have actually put up your email and your web address. And so it's davidyoungmusicandart.com.
Yeah, that don't, if you want to contact me, that's enough. You can just put it right through my website, davidyoungmusicandart.com.
Okay. Yeah. So you can find him there. You can find, if you could just talk a little bit about a few minutes about the portal that you've put together and how you're sharing information through that. That's another aspect. Just share with the audience a little bit of that.
Well, I do 2 events now. One is called A Portal Between Heaven and Earth, which is a 2.5-hour event, basically. It has 2 half-hour meditations where people can share and ask questions after their experience. And now the new workshop I have is called The Missing Years of Jesus and Mary Magdalene. And what I teach people is that I teach people how to make this at the workshop. So for you guys out there in TV land or digital land who are watching this, you can make this, but this is the best way to explain how that Roman soldier saved his life, why he was put in the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea, and why the last person seen at that tomb is Mary Magdalene. You know, all of these pieces, they're all part of this puzzle that they're very happy that people are finally getting to hear their version of the story.
Yeah. Yeah, we're in a great time right now of where truth is really being revealed through so many people that are hearing information, questioning so much that we've been given, that has been wrong, and to make it right so that we can move forward and in truth. And so, do you want to leave us with some kind of thought today? What kind of prophetic information or
Okay,
what you'd like to share?
Okay, so my book came out in 2019, this one. And after the book came out, I was in Pacific Palisades, actually, at my friend's house that just actually burned down last week, because I lived in Pacific Palisades on and off for 5 years. And so there was this area in the backyard where I was living where the trees made a circle around me, like a complete circle. So let's just say that I'm standing in the middle of this circle, and I had just finished writing the book, and Jesus appeared next to me in spirit, and his arms were up like this, like making like the letter Y,
Mhm.
right? And he told me, um, when you think of me looking up to the light and looking up to God.
Mm.
Don't think of me like this on the worst day of my life.
Mm.
That doesn't bring good energy to me.
Mm.
Think of me looking up to God and looking up to the light, and you can do the same thing. And so that's what he said to me.
Mm.
For years, I would look at the corner of my room. And if you look in the corner of your room, you see where the ceiling reaches the right wall and the left wall in your room. You see how that makes the letter Y?
Mhm. Mhm.
I used to see that and I used to think, what are they trying to tell me? Who, why, what is the Y? That's his real name, Yeshua. Y
Mm.
is his real initial. That's why he went like this, because he makes the letter Y, which is who he really is.
Mm. Thank you. Thanks, David. It's been amazing. And we're so grateful that you're sharing this information all over, all over. And just we can't begin to understand it at the depth in which there's, I'm sure, more information to be had, and we're uncovering it piece by piece so that it makes the most perfect puzzle that comes together with all of the information so that we really can know and know more about this individual, about both of Mary Magdalene and Yeshua. And so thanks again for sharing this with us.
My
It's been
pleasure.
really, really wonderful. Thank you. And thank you for everyone for showing up today. Appreciate it. You've been watching the galactic discoveries here, and we'll see you soon.